I used to believe that the worst thing an affair could do was break a heart. Then I had 3 children, 2 aging parents, and a mortgage that was technically in my name but practically owned by my husband's influence. And I learned that the most dangerous betrayal is the kind that reassigns your life's resources to someone else while you are still breathing. My name is Elena Voss, and for most of my adult life I was Marcus Voss's wife, the way a building has a plaque. Decorative, reassuring, and easy to ignore until it goes missing. I met Marcus at 19, when he was a brilliant scholarship kid, with an accent that made professors lean in, and I was the daughter of a nurse who knew how to stretch dinner into 2 nights. He carried ambition like a clean weapon, and when he smiled, people believed he was the exception to every rule. I believed it too. We built something together, or at least we built the illusion that we were building it together, and the illusion held until the moment it didn't. The day my 3rd child arrived, my world narrowed to milk, stitches, and sleep measured in minutes. I thought, foolishly, that this would be the safest part of life, the part where the universe grants you a pause. The universe did not pause. It simply moved its knives to places you wouldn't notice until you stood up again. The first sign was not lipstick or hotel receipts. Marcus was too careful for that, and the kind of money he managed left very little paper lying around. The first sign was language. He began saying we less and I more. He stopped asking me what I wanted for dinner and started informing me when he would not be home. He used to come into the nursery at night and place his palm on the baby's back, as if the child's breathing was a stock chart he needed to reassure himself about. Then he stopped, and the only time he entered the nursery was to take a call with the door half closed, voice low, laughter careful. I don't mean the laughter of a man flirting with novelty. I mean the laughter of a man who has found someone who mirrors him in the specific way he craves, someone who makes him feel understood without requiring him to admit his own emptiness. When the laughter arrived, so did the strategic trip to Geneva, and the urgent dinner with an investor who turned out to be an investor's wife's cousin's friend. I asked, gently at first, then sharply, then with the kind of quiet that means you've stopped trying to protect their pride. Marcus replied with calm irritation, the tone he used when analysts brought him imperfect numbers. Elena, he said, don't do this. You're tired. You're emotional. You're reading ghosts into spreadsheets. He always had a way of turning my instincts into an unprofessional hobby. I didn't go hunting for proof because I thought it would make me feel better. I went hunting because Marcus's life was not a simple salary and a simple house. Marcus ran a multi-strategy fund whose assets were counted in volumes that made ordinary people blink. On paper, he was a senior partner at a firm that specialized in risk-adjusted returns. In practice, he was a switchboard for capital. A man who could redirect entire projects by moving a pen and smiling at the right lunch. He didn't have a public yacht with his name on the side, and he didn't post photos of champagne towers. He preferred a kind of stealth wealth, a soft suit, a watch you only noticed if you knew how to notice. That stealth had an unpleasant implication. If he decided to divorce, he could do it in a way that left me with a legal settlement that looked generous on a spreadsheet and felt like starvation in reality. My parents' medical bills were the kind that didn't respect pride. My eldest, Noah, had just entered a university program that was basically a conveyor belt into finance, but only if you had a sponsor. My daughter, Mira, was at a private academy where tuition was a small country's GDP. The baby, Jules, had been in neonatal care for 2 weeks and still had follow-up appointments that sounded like invoices. I didn't fear being alone. I feared being stripped of infrastructure. The other woman was called Iris Wen. I learned her name the way you learn the name of a storm. First in distant reports, then in the sudden shift of pressure. Iris was in Marcus's executive MBA cohort years ago, the sort of class designed to create alliances disguised as education. She had the kind of beauty that looked curated rather than inherited. Sharp jaw, soft mouth, hair always glossy, posture as if she had been trained in how to take up space. She ran her own boutique advisory firm and spoke at panels about women in leadership. If she had wanted to be a heroine in the story people tell themselves about modern independence, she could have been. Instead, she chose the oldest shortcut and wrapped it in new language. Iris never demanded money from Marcus in texts, never sent messages that said buy me or leave her. She never called my home. She didn't need to. She built a posture of restraint and purity so convincing that it made Marcus feel noble for breaking vows. He spoke of her, cautiously at first, then more openly, in the way men speak of a colleague who has good ideas. Iris understands the market psychology, he said once at dinner, as if I were his junior associate. She sees patterns. I smiled and passed him the salt. Later, in the bathroom, I bit my lip until it went numb because the truth was simpler. Iris understood men like Marcus because she specialized in being the kind of woman a man like Marcus likes to rescue. There is a particular humiliation in being outperformed by someone who is performing. Iris had everything I no longer had time to polish. Time, energy, an adult body not still healing, the ability to speak Marcus's language of funds and leverage and exit timing. I had breast pads and a diaper bag and the smell of spit up in my hair no matter how often I washed it. If Iris had attacked me directly, I might have fought like a cornered animal and felt clean about it, but she didn't attack. She sighed softly at dinners with other executives. She listened to Marcus's complaints about domestic stress, and she acted as if she was doing him a favor by keeping her own feelings small. That was the genius. The smaller she pretended to be, the larger Marcus felt. The larger Marcus felt, the more he resented the ordinary reality of a wife who needed him to take out the trash and show up for pediatric appointments. One evening, after he returned from a conference with a fresh tan in February, he said, almost casually, "We should talk about restructuring." My spine went cold. In our world, restructuring meant layoffs, divestments, and strategic eliminations. "Restructuring what?" I asked. He didn't look at me when he replied. "Us," he said. Then he added, as if offering a consolation prize, "Of course you'll be taken care of." At 2 a.m, while Jules slept with his mouth open like a tiny, exhausted fish, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote down 3 columns. What I can lose, what I cannot lose, and what I can weaponize. My feelings did not qualify as assets. My youth did not qualify anymore. My willingness to sacrifice did not count. The only true leverage I had was Marcus's sense of himself. Marcus liked to believe he was principled. He liked to believe that even if he made ruthless decisions at work, he remained honorable at home. That vanity could be used. The problem was that Iris did not threaten him with greed. She threatened him with absolution. If she had been loud and demanding, Marcus could have discarded her and congratulated himself for resisting temptation. Instead, she offered him a fantasy. A relationship that didn't cost him effort. A woman who didn't ask him to examine his own rot. I needed a way to change the fantasy's flavor. I needed to stain Iris in a way Marcus could not morally negotiate. I did not have the kind of influence that lets you punish someone with a phone call. I did have a bar, technically. Years ago, when Marcus's fund began printing money, I bought a small membership lounge in the city because I wanted something I could point to and say, "This is mine." I wasn't foolish enough to think ownership equals freedom, but it did give me a window into a world of men who treat emotions like transactions. In that lounge, I once watched a man in a cheap shirt convince a woman in a designer dress that he was the only person who had ever seen her soul. He did it with a glass of tap water and the correct silence. People called him Kaito Rivers. In truth, his last name changed depending on which woman was listening. He was a behavioral consultant when he needed to sound clean, a fixer when he wanted to sound dangerous, and a drifter when he wanted to sound harmless. He had a smile that made you want to confess your worst decisions just to see if he would forgive you. I had warned the staff not to let him hunt in my space. He had laughed, blown smoke toward my face, and slipped me a card anyway. "You never know," he said. I had kept the card out of irritation. I used it out of desperation. Kaito met me in daylight at a cafe that made its money, pretending it was a library. He wore a pale sweater and a watch that looked expensive without shouting. He had turned himself into a man a wealthy woman could introduce to her mother without shame. "Mrs. Voss," he said, voice warm. "You finally called." I didn't like that he sounded pleased. I explained the situation quickly, the way you explain a corporate crisis. Stakes, timeline, objective. "I want you to seduce Iris when," I said. "Once is enough. She prides herself on being pure. If she crosses a line with someone else, Marcus will lose his worship." Kaito listened without blinking, then leaned back and folded his hands. "Seduce is vague," he said. "Do you want a kiss? A night? A signature on a hotel bill?" I stared at him. "I want Marcus to believe she isn't the holy exception," I replied. "I want his guilt to detach from her and land where it belongs." Kaito smiled as if I had complimented his craft. "You're not romantic," he observed. "That's why you'll survive." Then he began negotiating like a man ordering supplies. "Iris won't go for a man who looks available," he said. "She goes for men who look impossible." He listed requirements. The right social proof, the right venues, the right pictures online. He spoke about yachts and private art previews with the calm of someone who could conjure them. I told him I would pay expenses with receipts and $50,000 up front, more on success. He laughed. That's not enough for the kind of illusion you need, he said. Illusions are expensive. I told him he already lived in illusions. His social media was full of conference stages, coding trophies, polo lawns. Those are borrowed, he admitted. Borrowed things have return dates. In the end, we struck a deal that made my stomach hurt. A fixed fee and a condition that I would not interfere. Give me a month, he said, stirring his coffee as if stirring fate. And push your husband out of the country. Out of the country? I repeated. Kaito's eyes sharpened, just slightly. Distance makes people brave, he said, and it makes them sloppy. I did my part. I encouraged Marcus to take a short-term assignment in Zurich under the pretext of reducing public exposure, while the board reviewed the restructuring rumors. He accepted quickly, which told me the idea had already been circulating. He kissed Jules's forehead, like an actor, finishing a scene and promised to FaceTime. The moment his car left the driveway, I felt the house exhale, as if it had been holding its breath for years. Kaito did not waste time. The next day, my security camera from the lounge caught him entering a high-end shopping gallery where Iris liked to hold informal meetings. I watched from a hidden angle, heart thumping, while he walked past Iris as if she didn't exist and approached an older woman beside her, her mother. I guessed from their resemblance. In his hand was a private club membership card with a lacquered emblem, the kind of thing people in certain circles treat like a passport. Kaito bowed slightly, polite, harmless. Excuse me, he said. I think you dropped this. The older woman frowned, then shook her head. Iris's eyes flicked to the card. Kaito smiled sheepishly and scratched the back of his neck, playing young. Then I've bothered you for no reason, he said. Although, if I'm honest, I wanted an excuse to introduce myself to your daughter. I thought I should ask your permission first. The mother's face softened the way mothers' faces soften when they remember they still have authority. Iris watched, calculating. In our world, adult women still crave the moment a parent is addressed with respect. Kaito had not approached Iris directly. He had approached her origin. Iris extended her hand. I'm Iris Wen, she said, voice smooth. Have we met? Kaito widened his eyes as if surprised by her initiative. I don't think so, he replied, shaking her hand with careful distance. If we had, you'd already be in my contacts. It was a line so arrogant it should have failed, yet his delivery made it sound like a compliment. Iris laughed. I felt sick watching it work. Within 5 minutes, they had exchanged accounts. Later, when I opened the profile Kaito had built for this project, I realized he had assembled an entire plausible myth. Photos at hackathons, a charity gala, a polo match with the right hedge fund heir in the background, a published paper on decision theory. It was too clean, which meant it wasn't fully fake. Only a person who had touched those worlds could mimic their textures. I called him that night. How? I demanded. Kaito's voice on the line sounded amused. You paid for competence, he said. Try enjoying it. The following week was my son's 100-day celebration. My family is not Chinese, but Marcus's business partners loved any excuse for ritual, and we had adopted certain traditions as a way of signaling belonging. I suggested we keep it small, intimate, tasteful. Marcus, weary from politics and damage control, agreed. I booked the event at an exclusive private dining venue called the Copper Room, one of those places where the menu is a whisper and the walls absorb secrets. Iris had access to it too, and I knew she would come if she heard. People like Iris cannot resist proximity to proof. Kaito arranged it. He invited Iris to a casual conveyor belt sushi place near his apartment, which sounded innocently absurd for someone with Iris's polished brand. She accepted because he framed it as a nostalgia trip. My first investor took me there, he said in messages I later read. It's cheap and honest. It reminds me not to become a cliché. Iris loved anything that allowed her to feel superior while pretending she wasn't. I watched their date through the device Kaito wore under his collar, my heart hammering with shame at the voyeurism and with fury at the necessity. The sushi bar forced closeness. They sat side by side, shoulders nearly brushing. Kaito did not rush. He placed small plates in front of Iris as if he was offering her permission to be indulged. He spoke about tiredness, about work, about the heaviness of responsibility, and Iris mirrored his cadence like she had always been trained to do. At 5 p.m., while the sun was still bright, He suggested a walk. Iris agreed. They passed a fruit stand. Kaito bought grapes and a pomelo. Nothing that could be peeled and eaten instantly. Everything that required washing and a knife. "Come up," he said lightly. "I'll cut it. You can judge my skills." Iris hesitated for exactly 2 seconds, then smiled and followed. I felt like my own skin was made of static. I hated Kaito. I hated Iris. I hated Marcus. I hated myself for putting a plan in motion that used human impulses like a chessboard. But I also felt the cold clarity of survival. In a world where my security was a negotiation, I needed leverage, not purity. That night, Iris did not return to her apartment. The next morning, in the middle of a board call, Marcus texted me a photo of Jules sleeping and wrote, "Miss him." The casualness of his lie made my teeth ache. My 100-day celebration at the Copper Room unfolded like a set I had dressed for the camera. Soft light, quiet music, guests who mattered. Iris arrived downstairs in a red dress uncomfortably close to mine, and I knew she had come to watch me occupy the seat she wanted. After the cake, I carried Jules into the ground-level lounge, chose a corner visible from several tables, and nursed him. The act was ordinary, but I understood the social reflex it would trigger. A young staff member approached and asked me to stop, suggesting the restroom. I answered calmly that a hungry baby did not belong beside toilets. Heads turned. Men looked away. Women watched, tense. Iris stood and snapped that she had complained, calling me indecent and attention-seeking. Marcus came down the stairs mid-sentence and froze as he heard her voice. Without speaking to her, he shrugged off his jacket and draped it over my shoulder and the baby, then ordered the manager to bring a privacy screen. Iris's control fractured. She kicked the screen as it arrived, sending it crashing to the floor. Jules shrieked. I clutched him, shaking. Iris shouted insults about my body and my worth, and something in Marcus hardened into ice. "Remove her," he said flatly. Security dragged Iris out while she screamed his name and accused him of betrayal. Phones filmed. By morning, the clips were already circulating in private channels. And by the end of the week, Marcus's board decided the only way to cool the story was distance. They sent him to London under the banner of strategic separation, while lawyers and PR teams disinfected the headlines. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt dread that my controlled fire had found hidden fuel. Instead, I felt a tight dread that my plan had triggered a chain reaction I could not stop. Kaito met me 2 days after Marcus left. He looked annoyingly fresh, as if crisis fed him. "Congratulations," he said, leaning against my lounge's bar. "Your husband is airborne and your rival is radioactive." "This ends now," I said. "You did your job." Kaito's smile thinned. "I did the job you asked for," he corrected, "and discovered a better job in the process." I frowned. "What better job?" He tapped his finger on the wood, counting. "Iris Wen is not your real problem," he said. "She's a symptom. Marcus Voss is your lever. The people around him are his spine. If you want to protect your children, you should understand what actually holds your household together." "I'm not paying for a lecture," I snapped. Kaito's gaze lifted, calm, almost pitying. "You're paying whether you admit it or not," he replied. "You already paid with your dignity when you watched through that camera." My throat closed. The shame hit late, like bruising. "Don't," I warned. Kaito lifted one shoulder. "Fine. Here's the short version. Iris is going to beg you soon. She will cry. She will offer friendship. She will ask you to help her explain in London. She thinks you are her enemy, which is adorable." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "Your enemy is the architecture that made Marcus possible." I wanted to throw him out. Instead, I asked the question that had been clawing at me since the first day I saw his perfect polo photo myth. "Who are you? Really?" Kaito smiled without warmth. "A man who learned early that families are contracts," he said, "and that contracts can be rewritten." Then he walked away, leaving me with the unsettling sense that I had hired a storm and was now trying to negotiate with weather. Iris did beg. She arrived at my house one afternoon wearing a beige coat that made her look softer. She brought pastries from a bakery Marcus liked, as if sugar could reset history. She stood in my doorway like a woman presenting herself for judgment. "Elena," she said, voice trembling. "I'm sorry about what happened. I wasn't myself." I looked at her and saw the bruising fatigue around her eyes, the subtle tremor in her fingers. Something had happened to her beyond a public humiliation. Kaito had said he could stain her. It appeared he had done more than stain. "What do you want?" I asked. Iris swallowed. "I need to see Marcus." she whispered. I need to explain. The videos, the way I looked, that's not who I am. I almost laughed. It is exactly who you are, I said. Then I softened my tone. Not out of kindness, but out of calculation. Why do you think I can help you? Iris's eyes flickered. Because you're his wife, she said. He listens to you. The phrase struck me as both insult and indictment. My entire marriage reduced to a function, listener. I watched Iris's mouth tremble and realized she truly believed this narrative. That I was the gatekeeper, not the partner. It was the kind of belief men like Marcus encourage because it keeps women competing for access, rather than questioning the institution. I let Iris talk. She spoke about stress, about pressure, about feeling alone. She did not mention Kaito by name. When she did mention a man she had met, her voyant cracked. She looked away, as if afraid of his shadow. He said he understood me, she whispered. He said I didn't have to pretend anymore. I studied her carefully. Did he ask you for money? I asked. No, she said quickly. He never asked. That's why I trusted him. Of course, I thought. The cleanest thieves never ask. They create a situation where you offer. When Iris left, she looked lighter, as if confessing had relieved her. I watched her walk down my driveway and felt a chill. She still thought this was a triangle. It was not. It was a net. The first time I realized Kaito was building something larger than my petty war. I saw it on the camera feed I had forgotten to disable. The device in his apartment, the one we had installed for verification, still had access. I told myself I would not look again. Then I did. The way people touch a bruised tooth with their tongue even when it hurts. On screen, Iris was on her knees on Kaito's hardwood floor, crying. Kaito stood over her holding a hammer. In front of him was a row of wine glasses lined up like a ritual. He swung the hammer and shattered them one by one, each crack a sharp punctuation. Iris flinched at every blow, hands covering her ears, shoulders shaking. When the last glass broke, Kaito knelt and scooped up the shards in his bare palm. Blood welled between his fingers. He squeezed. Iris screamed his name. Kaito's face did not change. Say it, he whispered. I love you, Iris sobbed. Again, he demanded. I love you, she repeated, voice ragged. Kaito relaxed as if the words were medicine. He pulled Iris into his arms, pressing his bleeding hand against her back, smearing her dress. I can't breathe when I think you'll leave, he murmured, voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. Promise me. I promise, Iris whispered, stroking his hair as if he were a wounded child. Prove it, Kaito said. How? Iris asked, desperate. Tomorrow you'll wake up early and cook breakfast, he said calmly. Not delivery, not a chef, you, hands, heat, effort. Iris nodded like a disciple. The camera angle shifted slightly, and for a horrifying second, I saw Kaito's eyes lift toward the lens. He smiled directly at me, slow and intimate, as if we were sharing a joke. He raised 2 fingers in a lazy salute, then made a small heart shape with his thumb and index finger. My stomach dropped. I typed a message. Stop. This is over. No reply. I tried to transfer money as agreed. The transaction bounced. I called Kaito. No connection. I called Iris. Blocked. It was not just that he had gone beyond my contract. It was that he had severed my ability to intervene, leaving me trapped as a witness to a machine I had switched on. Over the next week, the tests escalated. Iris cooked, cleaned, obeyed, laughed on cue. Kaito's demands climbed from domestic rituals to humiliation disguised as devotion. He made her get a tattoo on her ribcage. A small crescent and barley sprig, our secret symbol turned into a brand. He made her call him Sir, then Mother, then Home, twisting language until she sounded like she had forgotten her own name. Then men began to appear in the apartment. Different men, each one connected in some way to Marcus. An ex-professor, a former colleague, a cousin of a board member, a man who once toasted Marcus at a charity dinner. Kaito introduced them with polite smiles. Iris's face emptied as if she had been unplugged. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my phone. This was not seduction. It was scorched earth revenge. And it was aimed at Marcus, not Iris. I was terrified. And terror makes you calculate in brutal increments. I could not call the police without confessing that I had installed surveillance. I could not contact Marcus without explaining why Iris's collapse was connected to my hired consultant. I could not confront Kaito without risking that he would turn his attention to me, and I had already seen how efficiently he could shape fear into obedience. So I did what mothers do when the world becomes unsafe. I moved my children out of the blast radius. I sent Noah and Mira back to school early under the excuse of routine. I kept Jules close, always close. His small weight, a reminder that I had a reason to be cautious. I hired a crisis PR firm to scrub anything that could link my bar to Kaito. I paid lawyers quietly to review my marriage's financial structure and assemble contingencies. I slept in fragments, waking to check locks and feeds like a paranoid guard. Noah, who had inherited Marcus's sharpness and my stubbornness, noticed. One evening he stood in the doorway of my office, jaw tight. "Mom," he said, "are you going to let Dad do this?" "Do what?" I asked, though I knew. "Replace you," he said bluntly. "Act like you're an inconvenience." His hands clenched. "We don't need him. I can get an internship without him." "You think the world is fair," I said gently. "It isn't." Noah's eyes flashed. "Then we make it less unfair," he snapped. "We fight." I wanted to hold him. I wanted to tell him to stay innocent longer. Instead I asked, "How would you fight?" He hesitated, then pulled up his laptop. "I can trace who's pushing the videos," he said. "I can bury them." Mira, overhearing, stepped in, arms crossed. "I can make a plan," she said with the fierce confidence of a teenager who believes planning is control. "Like a schedule, like a campaign." I stared at my children and felt something twist. Pride, fear, grief. They were becoming adults in the shadow of my choices. I wanted to stop the world from sharpening them, but sharpening was already happening. I told them, firmly, to stay out of it. I told them their job was school, and sleep, and being young. They listened with their faces, not their hearts. 2 days later, I discovered Noah had created a burner account to monitor gossip channels, and Mira had searched for behavioral coercion signs and saved dozens of articles. They were learning, whether I wanted them to or not. Marcus called from London at odd hours. The first week he sounded exhausted but intact, as if distance had returned him to himself. The second week he sounded hollow. "People look at me differently," he admitted one night. "They don't say it, but I can hear it. It's like the room has a smell." I made sympathetic noises while my mind ran through risks. Marcus was in a special period, the kind of period where markets and politics braided tightly, and his mental stability mattered not just to our family but to the power structures he served. His senior partner called me, voice low, asking if I could fly to London to support Marcus. "You know him," the man said. "He listens to you." Again, the function. Listener. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to stay where my children were. I also recognized the trap. If Marcus collapsed publicly, the firm could scapegoat him and then quietly detach from me, leaving me exposed. If Marcus stabilized, I could negotiate. Survival. Again, disguised as loyalty. So I went. I packed Jules and a nanny and flew to London, heart pounding, mind rehearsing lies. Marcus's apartment in Canary Wharf was sleek and temporary, the kind of place you rent when you're not sure how long you'll be exiled. When he saw me, he hugged me too tightly, face buried in my hair. He smelled like stress and expensive soap. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I made you come." I didn't answer with forgiveness. I answered with logistics. Meals, naps, routines, the steady scaffolding of domestic life. Marcus relaxed slightly when he ate home-cooked food. He spoke to Jules softly, eyes wet. For 2 evenings we almost resembled a family again, and the familiarity frightened me because it reminded me how easy it is to slip back into old roles. On the 3rd day, Marcus asked, carefully, "Have you heard from Iris?" My pulse thudded. "No," I lied. He looked relieved and ashamed at once. "Good," he said. "I don't want to think about her." Then he added, in a tone that tried to be casual, "It's strange. I had a dream that she was someone else. Like a mask." My stomach tightened. The mask was real, just not in the way he meant. That afternoon I walked to an Asian supermarket across town to buy pork belly and spices, because Marcus claimed he missed real food. The trip was an excuse to breathe. In the baby care room near the back, while changing Jules, I heard a familiar laugh. Warm, lazy, too confident for fluorescent light. "Mrs. Voss," Kaito said, Long flight? I turned slowly. He stood in the doorway holding a shopping basket, dressed like a harmless rich boy. His smile was bright enough to be innocent. Behind him, at the edge of the room, a small red dot glowed on a wall outlet. A hidden camera. My skin went cold. "Kaito," I said, forcing calm. "What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, eyes flicking to Jules with an expression that almost looked sincere. "Returning a favor," he said. "You wanted your husband sent away. He's away. You wanted your rival broken. She's broken. You should be grateful." "I wanted a divorce deterrent," I whispered. "Not this," Kaito shrugged. "You don't get to choose the shape of consequences," he said. Then, softer. "Your children are lucky. They have a mother who fights." The phrase hit wrong, as if he had studied it. "I asked you to stop," I said. "You asked," he replied. I decided. He lifted his arm slightly, as if inviting a hug. "Come on," he said lightly. "We've shared secrets. Surely I deserve a goodbye." My body screamed not to move. I shifted Jules higher against my chest, using him as a shield, and smiled politely. "Not today," I said. "My hands are full." Kaito's eyes narrowed for a flicker, then softened again. "Another time," he murmured. "I'll be here in 3 days. Same place. Bring dumplings if you're feeling generous." I nodded as if considering it. Inside, panic hit like water in lungs. When I left the supermarket, my hands shook so hard I could barely buckle Jules into his stroller. I knew then, with clean clarity, that Kaito had not used me as a client. He had used me as an entry point. Back at the apartment, Marcus was on the floor with Jules, stacking blocks as if constructing a fragile tower of normalcy. He looked up and smiled, and my stomach twisted because I could still love parts of him while hating what he had done. Love is not a moral reward. It is an attachment, sometimes an injury, Marcus asked. "Did you find pork?" "Yes," I said, voice steady. "And ginger." He sighed in relief. "Thank you," he murmured. And then, abruptly, he knelt in front of me, hands wrapping around my waist. The gesture was dramatic, almost theatrical, the kind of thing men do when they feel their world slipping. "Elena," he whispered, "please don't leave me." I stared at the top of his head. "Why now?" I asked quietly. "Why after you talked about restructuring?" Marcus flinched. "I was lost," he said. "I was stupid." He swallowed. "When those videos came out, all I could think was, thank God it wasn't you. If it had been you, I would have burned the city down." His voice broke. "I can't live without you." The words should have warmed me. Instead, they tasted like fear. Marcus didn't love me more. He simply realized the outside world was dangerous and wanted to retreat to the safety of the woman he had always assumed would remain. He wanted the home smell back, the clean plates, the unconditional patience. He did not want to examine why he had strayed. He wanted absolution delivered in a casserole dish. I pulled his hands away gently. "Get up," I said. "Jules is watching." Marcus rose slowly, eyes wet. "We can bring Noah and Mira here," he said quickly. "We can stay in London. We can start over. Away from gossip." "You want to hide?" I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "I want to be free." Marcus stared as if I had spoken a language he didn't recognize. "Free?" he repeated. "From what?" "From you," I thought. "From your gravity. From being a function." Out loud, I said, "From living in fear of your decisions." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm trying," he insisted. "I'm coming back soon. The board says the pressure is easing." "Pressure on you," I corrected gently, "not on me." That night, after Marcus fell asleep, I opened my laptop and began assembling an exit plan that did not rely on his guilt. I contacted an attorney in London who specialized in cross-border divorces. I requested a valuation of assets Marcus could not easily hide. I reviewed trust structures for the children, including educational funds that could be insulated from Marcus's mood swings. I knew the work would be messy. I also knew something else. Chillingly, I had a separate danger now, Kaito. To protect myself from Kaito, I needed to understand him. The only way to understand a predator is to locate its hunger. I dug into Kaito the way you dig for a leak behind a wall. Quietly, through people paid to keep other people invisible. A retired family office lawyer confirmed what my gut had suspected. Kaito Rivers was a mask. His birth name was Kai Torin, the discarded twin from a dynasty that managed its wealth in shadows. His mother had been pushed out, his brother kept as heir, and Kai had grown up learning how to survive outside polite rooms while never forgetting who locked the door. It explained his skill, his contempt for mistresses, and his obsession with making powerful men taste public shame. Marcus wasn't the origin of the vendetta, just a convenient anchor for it. Knowing this didn't make me safer, but it gave the danger a shape, and shapes can be planned around. The next time Marcus's senior partner called, asking again for me to support Marcus, I agreed, but for a different reason. If Kaito wanted to corner Marcus, I needed Marcus to be stable enough to respond rationally. If Marcus reacted with violence or panic, the financial fallout could crush us all. I didn't want Marcus destroyed. I wanted him detached from my life without detonating my children's future. Survival, again, demanded choreography. 3 days later, Kaito returned to the supermarket baby care room as promised. I did not go. I stayed home and watched through the investigator's feed instead. Kaito waited for 15 minutes, then smiled to himself and left, as if he had expected my refusal. Later that night, I received a message from an unknown number. I don't bite mothers. I punish fathers. Stop worrying. My hands turned cold. I forwarded the message to my lawyer and did the only practical thing left. I pulled Marcus's mother into the circle. Lillian was not tender, but she understood threats to the family name. I told her a sanitized version an unknown actor was pressuring Iris and circling Marcus, and she responded with the efficiency of old money. She opened doors I had never been allowed to touch, brought accountants to the table, and insisted Marcus stay rational long enough for us to build legal insulation around the children. It wasn't love, it was containment. The following month was a strange limbo. Marcus returned to the office in London, appearing at meetings with a brittle smile. Gossip cooled, not because people forgot, but because more exciting scandals arrived. The firm's PR machine worked like antiseptic. It didn't remove the wound. It simply made it less visible. Marcus kept trying to pull me back into his orbit, offering dinners, gifts, apologies. I accepted none of it fully. I became polite stone. Meanwhile, Iris vanished from public view. Her social media went silent. Her firm announced an extended sabbatical. In private circles, people whispered that she had mental health issues, the corporate euphemism used when someone has been broken by something too ugly to name. I felt a flicker of pity, then shut it down. Pity is a luxury when your own house is on fire. Noah called me at night from campus, voice low. "Mom," he said, "I traced something." I closed my eyes. "You promised you'd stay out," I whispered. "I tried," he admitted. "But I found a link between the leaked clips and a server that routes through a private wealth management network. Not the fund. Something older. It's weird. It looks like family office infrastructure." My blood chilled. "Delete everything," I said immediately. "Erase your trail." Noah hesitated. "Mom," he said carefully, "are we in danger?" I wanted to lie. I couldn't. "Maybe," I said. "So you need to be smart." He swallowed audibly. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, I'll wipe it." After the call, I sat in the dark and realized my children were already paying for my decisions. Even if I saved the marriage, even if I saved the money, I could not undo the knowledge I had forced into their hands. That love is leverage and safety is negotiated. I hated myself for that. I also refused to waste their forced maturity on a future where I remained trapped, so I accelerated my exit plan. Lillian helped, in her own severe way. She arranged meetings with accountants. She provided documentation Marcus had never shown me, not out of kindness, but out of necessity. "If a stranger is sniffing around our structures," she said, eyes hard, "we close ranks." I was part of the ranks now, not because I was cherished, but because I was useful. My lawyer drafted proposals for separation. My accountant created a map of assets: real estate held through shells, educational trusts, life insurance policies with riders I hadn't known existed. I learned that the home I lived in was not exactly ours. It was part of a holding arrangement designed to protect Marcus from creditors and, conveniently, from spouses. The knowledge hurt less than it should have, because by then betrayal had become an expected weather pattern. One evening, Marcus came home early and found me on the couch with papers spread around. He froze, eyes scanning the documents. "What is this?" he asked, voice tight. "Preparation," I replied. "For what?" His voice sharpened. "For the reality you started," I said calmly. Marcus's face twisted. Elena, he snapped. Don't do this now. Not when I'm under pressure. I laughed softly. I've been under pressure for years, I said. You just didn't notice because I didn't have a board meeting about it. He stepped closer, anger and fear wrestling. Is this because of Iris? He demanded. This is because of you, I said. And because I will not raise my children inside a marriage where their mother's security depends on their father's guilt. Marcus's throat bobbed. For a moment he looked like a man reaching for a familiar tool charm, intimidation, pity, and realizing none of them fit. You think you can do this without me? He asked, voice low. Yes, I said, and the word felt like oxygen. Marcus stared at me, then turned away sharply, shoulders tense. You don't understand what you're inviting, he muttered. I held his gaze. I understand more than you think, I replied. You're not the only one with enemies. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? I didn't answer, because if I spoke Kaito's name, the story would become real for Marcus, and Marcus would react like a wounded animal. I needed him rational long enough to sign what I needed. Marcus slept in the guest room that night. In the morning he left without kissing the baby. The omission was small and cruel. It hardened me further. 2 weeks later, Kaito contacted me again, not by phone, but by presence. I was leaving a meeting with my lawyer when I saw him across the street, leaning against a lamppost like he owned the pavement. He wore a dark coat and looked absurdly young, like someone playing at being dangerous. His eyes, however, held exhaustion. You're restructuring, he called softly, using Marcus's word like a hook. I stopped walking. My security detail, yes, Lillian had insisted, stiffened. Kaito lifted his hands to show he carried no weapon. His smile was almost gentle. Relax, he said. If I wanted you harmed, it would have happened in the supermarket. My stomach turned. Why are you following me? I asked. Kaito shrugged. I'm not following, he said. I'm orbiting. Your world is interesting. He stepped closer, gaze dropping briefly to my ringless hand, then to the stroller where Jules slept. You're doing the brave thing, he said quietly. Leaving. I'm doing the necessary thing, I corrected. Kaito nodded as if conceding. Necessary is a kind of brave, he said. My guard shifted. We're leaving, he warned Kaito. Kaito ignored him. He looked at me. You're afraid I'll destroy Marcus, he said. I'm afraid you'll destroy everything, I replied. Kaito's jaw tightened. Everything was already rotten, he said. I'm just making the rot visible. Visibility doesn't feed children, I said, and it doesn't pay hospital bills. For the first time, Kaito's expression softened into something like pain. My mother died with hospital bills too, he murmured. She died while the man who replaced her took photos at charity galas. His eyes lifted, bright and cold. Do you know what it does to a child to watch morality lose? I felt my breath catch. In that moment I saw the ghost beneath his performance. A boy on an island, taught to smile while being discarded. You're not saving anyone, I said quietly. You're making Kaito's bleed so your own wound feels justified. Kaito's smile cracked. For a second he looked furious. Then he exhaled, long. Maybe, he admitted, but you, Elena Voss, you're different. You're not asking for mercy. You're asking for structure. He tilted his head. That's rare. What do you want? I asked. Kaito's gaze shifted past me toward the building where my lawyer worked. I want the truth to win for once, he said. And I want you to stop pretending you didn't use me. You did. Own it. I held his gaze, refusing to flinch. Fine, I said. I used you, and now I'm telling you to stop. Kaito's eyes narrowed. Stop what? Using my family as your stage, I replied. He stared at me for a long moment, then gave a small nod. You're right, he said softly, surprising me. Stages are a trap. He stepped back. I'll give you a gift, he added. What gift? I asked, wary. Kaito smiled, sharp again. I'll disappear, he said, and I'll take Iris with me. She's finished. She doesn't belong in your story anymore. Then he turned and walked away into traffic, dissolving into the city as if he had always been made of smoke. I stood frozen, heart pounding, unsure whether I had been threatened or spared. Kaito did vanish. Iris never resurfaced publicly. Rumors circulated. She had moved abroad. She had entered rehab. She had joined an art collective. None of it could be confirmed. In my quieter moments, I wondered whether she was alive in any meaningful sense. Then I pushed the thought away. If I tried to carry every casualty, I would drown. With Kaito gone, the immediate danger eased. But the damage remained. Marcus's reputation would always have a bruise. My children would always remember the night I told them maybe, when they asked if we were in danger. Lillian would always view me as an asset rather than a daughter. These were not things I could undo, so I focused on what I could build. The separation agreement took months. Marcus fought at first, not with screaming, but with lawyers and delays. He offered me a generous lifestyle if I stayed married, but independent. He tried to seduce me with vacations and nostalgia. I refused. Eventually, faced with his own board's impatience and his mother's blunt insistence that prolonged domestic conflict looked weak, he signed. The agreement was not romantic justice. It was careful survival. Assets in trust for the children, a settlement structured to avoid being easily clawed back, protections for my parents' healthcare costs, a clause that limited Marcus's ability to relocate the children without consent. The day the final papers were notarized, Marcus looked at me across the conference table and whispered, "Was I really that easy to replace?" I almost said, "You replaced me first." Instead, I said, "You weren't replaced. You were redefined. You did it to yourself." His eyes reddened. For a moment, he looked like the 19-year-old boy who had promised me he would never become like the arrogant men he studied. Then the moment passed. Men like Marcus do not live long in regret. Regret is inefficient. After the divorce, I moved with the children to a smaller city near the coast, where anonymity was possible, and the air smelled like salt instead of ambition. I sold my lounge. I used the proceeds to start a consultancy that helped women navigate financial separation without being eaten alive by paperwork. I didn't market it as revenge. I marketed it as literacy. Women came to my office with trembling hands and stories they thought were unique. They weren't. The details changed. The core didn't. Power shifts, women pay. I taught them to read contracts like maps. I taught them to document everything. I taught them that love is allowed, but dependence is dangerous. Noah finished his degree and earned internships on merit and stubbornness. Mira applied to art programs with scholarship essays that made committees cry. Jules grew into a toddler who laughed at seagulls and called the ocean Big Soup. My parents stabilized under predictable care. Life became, slowly, less dramatic. Sometimes, late at night, I would remember Kaito's eyes when he spoke of his mother. I would remember the way he had built an entire man out of social proof and charm. I would remember that I had hired him because I was terrified of becoming nothing. The cruel irony was that he had forced me, through fear, to become something real. A woman who could hold her own life without borrowing a man's name. On a crisp autumn morning, I took the children to a harvest festival on a hill. We ate warm pastries and watched the sun stretch across fields. A crescent-shaped kite rose in the sky, and below it a stalk of barley swayed in the wind. The symbol made my chest tighten. A ghost of a plan.